And here we start with the 28mm first on the Tamron at 2.8, which is the maximum aperture for this lens. You can see, although a little bit dark environment, it focuses fast, no issues here. So I'm switching to 35. Again, I don't see any issues. That's probably the first one. Now I'm switching to 50mm. So I keep a little bit dark so I can see if the light conditions are not the perfect ones, how the lenses are going to perform. So far, it's not bad. It seems that with increasing the focal length, now switching to 75, the lens starts to struggle a little bit. Let's see at 75. Not too bad, it hunts a little bit, but it's not dramatic. It definitely shows slowdown at 75mm. I'm not sure why at 28 starts really fast and then slows down. We're still far away from the minimum focus distance, which is 19 centimeters for this lens. We're at least at 2 feet to the closest lens, so it should be enough. So now I'm starting the video test, which will be the same like with the stills test, just I will actually record the video on the camera. I'm going to use the different focal lengths like 28, 35, 50 and 75, so you can see how it acquires focus in video. In the top right corner you can see the actual footage from the camera, so you can see how dark it is. It's not too dark, but it's not too bright either, so I just wanted to keep it in the middle so the lens is not like in the very perfect conditions. So far it's okay, but I think that with zooming in towards the 75, it started to slow down. Like in 50 it's already not too fast. It's not hunting, but it's kind of hesitating for a little bit. Now it's 75. You definitely see how it's hunting. I did not change the light, and we are far away from the minimum focus distance, so that to be the issue. The minimum focus distance for this lens is 19 centimeters, and the closest lens of those two, it's at 2 feet at minimum, so that's not the problem. It just hunts at 75, even at 2.8. So I'm switching to f11 at the still setup, starting again from 28mm with the Tamron. I decided to do the f11 as well, plus the open aperture, because I know when you close a little bit the blend, the lens started to suffer a little bit more. Then I want to experiment at f22 or some extremes, but f11 is a middle aperture. I think will show the qualities of the lens. So we're zooming here to 35. I think it's hunting a little bit. You can see that, but considering the not perfect light, I think it's okay. Now at 50 millimeters. Now definitely with zooming in, we see that hunting back at forth, looking for the contrast point. And of course I'm using those two G's from the Sony logo, so it gives a higher contrast points to get focus easier. Probably if the G wasn't there, it would be almost impossible to focus, at least here at 75. So it's still the Tamron, that's the video test. We keep the same settings from the stills test with f11, starting at 28 millimeters and going towards 75. Again, you can see in the top right corner is the actual footage from the camera, so you can judge the light, how light it was. I purposely used the single point to acquire focus in video, but I wish from Sony to change the color of that, so when it acquires focus, to change the color to green as it does with the stills. I was moving the camera because I was looking at that jittering, and I thought that it's a lack of the refresh rate of the screen, but I'm realizing that I'm shooting at 1/8 of the second, so that's what's causing it, and it's not the screen lag, that's something. So it would be nice if we have that confirmation with color in video mode that the object is in focus. Otherwise it's really hard to say, especially look at the live footage in the top corner. Plus the actual object is behind that square, so you have to kind of look through it to see is it in focus or is it not. And that's a contrast point with the the G, but if it's a face or something more even color, I don't think you can judge if the object is in focus. You just have to kind of trust the camera and see after you stop recording. So here we are at 75 millimeters, and we see that we already started to experience that slow autofocus after 50 millimeter, and especially here in 75 at f11 in video mode, it's like suffering a lot. See, that's 2, 3, 4 seconds. It's just too much. Again, I don't know why it performs better at smaller focal lengths and suffers at 75. Maybe some of you can tell me in the comments below. I may do some research for another video or article, but for sure the Tamron is suffering at f11 in video. So I'm switching the lenses now. That's the Sony 24 to 105, starting with the stills test at f4, which is the maximum aperture for this lens. I changed one of those two lenses, the back one, because before it was the 24 to 105, but now I'm using it, so I put the 135 at its place. I wanted to have a lens with G, so it will be consistent to look for that G to autofocus. Plus the size is very similar, so that should not change the performance in any way. So we see a 28mm. The Sony doesn't have any issues with the focusing. It stills mode. Now switching to 35. And again, no issues. I'm not trying to be the fastest with moving my hands or to count how many times it acquired autofocus during a certain time. It's not a scientific test or something. I just wanted to show you, like in real life, when you switch between two objects, how the two lenses autofocus and what's the speed of the autofocus and the accuracy of the autofocus. Does it hunt or not? So I think you can see that. Again, I'm sure there are hundreds of videos on YouTube with different people who measure everything more accurate, speaking about like how many times it focuses for a minute or for 2 minutes, whatever. At 75 with the Sony, I don't see any slowdown. Maybe comparing with the 28 or 35, it's a little bit slower, but it's definitely faster than the Tamron, although we're still with the stills test. Okay, so that's the video with the Sony lens, the video test at the maximum open aperture, which is f4. The right top corner, you can see the footage from the camera. I don't think there is any issue at 28mm, even at 35. Again, I would like from Sony, if that's not too hard, at least to add as an option to change color once it acquires video autofocus in video. I know some people use zebra or different other approaches, but still, maybe it's good for some like me. So no issues here. Zooming on all in. I think it's definitely faster than the Tamron. It is slower than whatever it was at 28 or 35mm, you see, but with the Tamron, it was suffering way more. I'm curious to see what it's going to be at f11. Here it's not too bad, it's just a little bit slower. And now the stills test at f11 with the Sony, starting at 28 millimeters. No problems with the focusing at f11 at 28. Even at 35, and at 50 is the same. No issues at f11. Let's see at 75. It hunts once, like going back and forth, but then maybe twice on the lens at the back, or maybe several times. And in general, I think it's a little bit faster. So let's see the video test with the Sony at f11, starting again at 28 millimeters. Again, you can see the footage from the camera in the top right corner. So far, there are no issues with the focusing, but I'm having troubles with to see if the picture is in focus or not. So I'm trying to move the white square so I can see below that. I really wish Sony to include that feature to be able to, when it acquires focus in video, to change the color of that focus point to green. To some research it may be available and I just don't know it, but it doesn't seem that Sony suffers too much. So far it's okay considering how dark it is. But as you can see, when we start zooming in, the Sony also suffers from acquiring the autofocus in video. Maybe not too much as the Tamron, because the Tamron at certain moments was taking like at least 4 or 5 seconds to acquire focus, but still it's way slower. Let's see at 75. That seems to be the ultimate test so far. It seems it's faster than the Tamron, but it takes way longer to acquire autofocus at 75 millimeters. So if I have to conclude what are my thoughts at the end of this video, is that definitely the Sony outperforms the Tamron, speaking about acquiring video autofocus, and even with stills, if it's not wide open, like in this case we have mid apertures like f11. That's it for today. Bye bye.